Hi everyone. I thought I would just jump on again and give you the latest update on what's been happening in the property market in the CF14 postcode. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Barrett. I am an estate agent. I cover a very wide geographical patch, all the way from West Wales down to Oxford and from sort of south of Birmingham down to Plymouth and Southampton. So I decided to do these videos on a very local basis for where I live because I've got lots of people who I know in and around the area who are always asking me what's happening in the property market. So I wanted to share that information, not just for them, but for you guys as well. So quick 10 minutes of telling you a little bit about what's happening in the marketplace. So what I tend to do is just share my screen and I can give you a little bit of a flavour for everything that's going on and what I'm seeing based on the data that's available. So I use a tool called 20EA. You can see it highlighted there. I don't work for or have any affiliation to this. It's just a data service that provides me with lots of information. Lots of estate agents have it. So if you are in the market buying, selling, investing, or just curious, your estate agent probably has access to a lot of this data. If, however, there is anything that you want to know specifically about what's going on in much sort of closer area, your type of property or your particular town or location, by all means reach out to me. I'll happily go through any data sets for you. Whilst I am talking about CF14 as my home address and I am an estate agent, I don't really do any great deal of work in the CF14 area. So this isn't an advert to use my estate agency services. This is just simply to try and give you as many people as much information as I possibly can. So let's get into some of the data. The things that we tend to talk about are instructions and sales and what's been happening in the marketplace. So you can see here the blue lines are our instructions, and you can see we've had our joint highest week. That's 2 weeks in a row of 43 properties coming to the market. So real indication that there's some good heat in the marketplace, some good intent in the marketplace with sellers coming to the market. So our two highest weeks over week 11 and week 12. What you can also see there is the orange bar. That's our sales for each week. And you can see there 4 consecutive weeks of growth in the sales numbers, 32 sales this week. So it's our third highest week of sales so far this year. Year to date, 421 properties coming to the market and 343 property sales in CF14. So lots of activity in the marketplace. I want to talk to you a little bit about price as well. Again, exactly the same thing. The blue bars here will demonstrate the properties coming to the market, the instructions. The orange bars represent the sales price. So you can see a slight drop off now in the average instruction price this week. So week 12, you can see it sort of come back down a little bit. Now, I want to give some assurance that this isn't an indication of some issues in the marketplace as far as I'm looking at the data. We had 3 big weeks where we were in excess of 400,000. Those were standalone weeks over week 9, 10 and 11. Very, very high average asking prices. And we can see then that week 12 has sort of come back a little bit more aligned with the rest of the marketplace. The average instruction price this week was 370,499. Now, if you compare that to the year-to-date average, which you can see is 386, it's relatively similar. Yes, it's below, but relatively similar. I think this is more of an indicator of some lower value properties coming to the market rather than an overall decline in property prices. And I'll show you why I think that in the next couple of slides. On sales, you can start to see there last week, week 11, we had a real spike up on average sales price. That is the indicator of just 2 very high value properties that sold and really took that average. It's important that we do look at the year-to-date average at 376,500. This week, week 12, the average sales price was 333,000. So again, below the average for year-to-date, but not, in my opinion, something that would give any real cause for concern, something that I think we will absolutely see moving forward and being steady in that sort of 370 to 380 category in the weeks ahead. Now, the reason I'm pretty confident on my views where the property pricing is here is the pound per square foot. Now, whilst the average values will obviously be dictated by the size of property coming to the market, pound per square foot will always fluctuate a little bit. It will tend to be different for apartments to houses, and different roads, garden size, general condition of property will always influence average pound per square foot. But over a significant period of time or a significant number of properties, it's a fairly good barometer to use. And what you can see here is the pound per square foot instructions at £375. Now, last week, week 11, when we did this, the average pound per square foot was 373. So we've actually had an increase. So whilst the average price had come down a little bit, the average pound per square foot of what's coming to the market has increased. So that's a real positive. At £399 a square foot coming to the market this week, that's a real uptick in what we're saying. The average sales was at £359 per square foot, so it's had no impact on the year-to-date pound per square foot. So again, the sales being the orange bars, year-to-date £358 per square foot, you can see there. So what we're looking at is that the difference really between the instruction pound per square foot and the sales pound per square foot. And that's probably best seen, or more easily seen, in this one. And again, I've done exactly the same thing. I've used the blue line for our instructions. I've used the orange line for our sales. And what you can see is a real correlation. You've got a couple of points there. Last week, week 11, the sales price went slightly above the instruction price. But generally speaking, you've got a real correlation as the property prices come into the market adapt. So do the sales prices. So you tend to see those going hand in hand. And there's no evidence of any concerning behaviour on the pound per square foot. Now, what will undoubtedly be interesting is to look at the abort rate, as we're starting to see sales beginning to creep up here. So sales in this instance is the blue line. I wanted to introduce the slide that now has aborts in there. So these are sales that for some reason or another don't go through to an exchange of contracts. Now, that might be change of buyer circumstance, change of vendor circumstance, various things, chain breakdowns, etc. But for one reason or another, they don't go through to an exchange of contracts. Okay, so at the moment, looking at this data, we've got an abort rate or a fall through rate. There's different terminology for these things of 25.9%. Basically means that 1 in 4 sales at the moment in CF14 are not going through to an exchange of contracts. Now, that is sitting slightly higher than the national average. The national average is 21.8%. So our abort rate or fall through rate sits ever so slightly above. Again, not alarmingly so, but something to be mindful of if you are selling in the marketplace at the moment, to make sure that when you're agreeing a sale on the property, that we are really making sure we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and making sure everything is absolutely watertight before embarking on a sale, to make sure you give yourself the best possible chance of exchanging contracts. Last couple of slides specifically on the instructions to sales is this. It's the sales rate. The sales rate really is a great barometer. It's one that I think any agent would use in any location to look at how are things sort of going in the marketplace. Now, you can see a couple of weeks there in the past that we've had a look at historically, week 2, week 5, where we've sold more properties, or sorry, there have been more sales in the marketplace than have been instructions. And then we sort of from week 6 onwards get into a sort of fairly up and down pattern, all in and around the sort of 60 to 80% mark. Now, you can see here that year to date, the sales rate is 81.5%. That is against a backdrop of a national average of just 64.4%. So really, really positive. Even when you're starting to look at some of the weeks which have been a little bit lower, this week was 74.4, and you kind of go, oh, it's a little bit down from where it has been. It still sits a solid 10% above where the rest of the marketplace is in the UK. So CF14, for me, when I look at this, is producing really, really well. The agents who operate in the area seem to be doing a really, really good job. So there's some real positives to be had from this. The interest is high and the work rate is good. So, really positive. Last couple of slides to go through are a bit of a breakdown of what the postcodes look like, or the outcodes for the postcodes. This is the sales rate. So the same data we just looked at there, where across the board we're at 81.5% average, and nationally we're at 64.4. You get an idea here for what each of the outcodes is doing. Now, we've talked about it before, but CF143 has a sales rate in excess of 100%. That has been 34 properties coming to the market and 38 selling. So it's 111.8 or virtually 112% sales rate. So absolutely fantastic. There's a real indication that that's a hot market at the moment. It does actually have the lowest pound per square foot on sales value. So it's selling an average of £299 a square foot. So, there's evidence there that CF14 with the more affordable properties is a real hotspot. So, really good things happening in that marketplace. The lowest sales rate is CF14.5 and it's 68.4. It does still sit above the national average. And now it's only 4% above the national average, so it's getting pretty close to it, but you're sitting on that upside of that. What we've also seen in that postcode is the abort or fall through rate that I mentioned earlier is slightly higher. It's actually sitting at 33.3%. So at the moment, 1 in 3 sales in that area, whilst it has got a relatively low sales rate, then 1 in 3 isn't making it to an exchange or contract. So it's an interesting one to keep an eye on in that CF14.5 patch. We'll probably see some alterations to the market, be that price or sales rate over the coming weeks, and that will be certainly a keen one to keep an eye on. Overall, we've got the bank holiday period coming up, The sales rate will probably start to fluctuate a little bit, probably even dip off a little bit. But what we would anticipate then is it coming back up again in the weeks after that. So over the next 2-3 weeks, it might look a little bit less exciting in the CF14 postcode, but we'll wait to see what the data shows us in those coming weeks. But that would be my guess at the moment. Last couple of slides just on the outcodes, just to conclude this piece, is looking at here the instructions versus the sales in terms of the volumes. We can see that CF14.4 has had the largest number of instructions coming to the market and it's just pipped CF14.6 in terms of the largest number of sales as well. So, CF14.4 producing really well. And if we start to look through at the average price across the outcodes, CF14.0 has both its instruction and its sales price. So instruction again being blue, sale being orange, both sitting above 600,000. So looking really strong in the CF14.0 patch. Looking across the rest, yes, you've got CF14.6, which is slightly higher. But the reality is all of the other postcodes are there or thereabouts and a little bit of a mix in terms of average price, all doing relatively similar with their instruction price, sales price being really quite close. There's not been massive drop off between instruction price and sales price. So for me, again, no matter which postcode area you're in within CF14, my hope is you're looking at this and thinking really positively about the fact that the market is probably doing really well. Whether you're buying or selling, actually there's some really good elements to the market at the moment. So that's just a very quick overview of what's happening in the property market in CF14. As I said, I have access to data. If you are interested in anything that's happening in your market, be that part of CF14 or even further afield, and you just wanted a little bit of information, I'd be more than happy to help. It's only a case of logging in, pulling out the data and sending it across. So if there's anything you specifically wanted to know about what's happening in any specific part of the marketplace, let me know and I'd love to help. If there's anything further beyond that that I haven't thought of that you would like to see added into this on a regular basis, on a sort of weekly basis, again, please drop it into notes or message me directly and I will absolutely make sure they're in there. Thanks ever so much for watching. I appreciate it. Cheers.